Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Confessions. The moment I pushed that small velvet box across the counter, the bartender froze like I just handed him a live snake. Give it to her when she comes up, I told him, my voice quieter than the hum of the ice machine. He glanced toward the far end of the bar, where she sat, oblivious, her hand brushing against the sleeve of a man I'd never met, and then back at me, like he wasn't sure he wanted to be part of this. The music was loud. The smell of citrusy cocktails clung to the air, and somewhere behind me, laughter rose like a spark catching flame. It wasn't just any laugh, it was hers. And it wasn't for me. I had no plan, no big speech, no confrontation, just this box. The same one I'd pulled from my coat pocket so many times, imagining how she'd cry when I opened it under candlelight. Tonight, though, it wasn't about promises. It was about endings. I didn't wait for her to notice me. I didn't want her to. I wanted the shock to come later, when she walked up here with her lover, ordered another drink, and found the thing she'd been flaunting to her friends suddenly lying in front of her, returned without a word. The bartender gave me a slow nod, sliding the box under the counter like it was contraband. I turned toward the door, my heart pounding so hard it made my hands shake. Halfway out, I caught my reflection in the window. My face was pale, my jaw tight, my eyes not just tired, but hollow. And that was when the thought hit me. She's not going to react how you think. It wasn't fear. It wasn't hope. It was something else. A strange certainty that whatever happened next, I wasn't in control anymore. I stepped outside, the winter air hitting me like a slap. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't check it. I just started walking, not knowing that within an hour, her reaction would spill far beyond that bar, and drag in people I never wanted involved. I didn't get far from the bar before the adrenaline started wearing off, replaced by a sick heaviness in my stomach. The street was quiet except for the occasional rumble of a passing car, but my head was anything but. I kept replaying the scene inside, her tilted smile, the way his hand lingered on her arm, the bartender's uneasy glance. I thought walking away would feel like reclaiming my dignity, but instead it felt like I just handed over the last piece of my pride and walked out into the cold without it. I ended up across the street, sitting on a bench with a bad view of the bar's front door. I wasn't planning to watch, but I couldn't move. My fingers kept curling into fists and then unclenching, like my body couldn't decide whether to fight or run. From where I sat, I could see just enough. The steady flow of people coming in and out, the clouds of smoke from the group of guys lingering near the entrance. My breath fogged in front of me, and every time the door opened, I half expected her to walk out with him, laughing like she'd just been handed the world. It was nearly 15 minutes before anything happened. I caught the shape of her through the glass first, moving toward the bar with that familiar sway in her step, her head tipped toward him like she was letting him in on a secret. The bartender's eyes flicked toward the door, then back to her. I could almost see the exact moment he reached under the counter. Even from across the street, I knew the second she saw the box. She stopped mid-sentence. Her hand hovered above the bar, and for a moment, her head turned slightly, scanning the room like she could feel a presence she couldn't quite place. The man beside her leaned in, said something with a smirk, and she opened the box. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She laughed. Not the warm laugh I used to know, but sharp, almost cruel, the kind of laugh people use to make sure others are watching. She held the box up to him like it was a joke, and he chuckled along, his eyes narrowing in that smug way that made my skin crawl even from here. Then she did something I didn't expect. She flagged down the bartender, slid the ring back into the box, and motioned for him to take it away. I couldn't tell if she was angry, embarrassed, or just playing it cool. The next thing I knew, she pulled out her phone, took a photo of the box on the counter, and started typing furiously. My phone buzzed seconds later. I didn't even have to check to know it was her. That was when I realized this wasn't going to end with me walking away quietly. She wasn't going to let it. The buzzing in my pocket wouldn't stop. At first, I thought it was just her. Maybe a few angry texts calling me petty or dramatic, but when I finally pulled the phone out, my lock screen was lit up with dozens of notifications. They weren't just from her. They were from people I hadn't spoken to in years. College friends, old coworkers, even my cousin in Oregon. All of them sending me screenshots. And every screenshot showed the same thing. A post from her social media, front and center. It was a picture of the ring box on the bar counter, the lid open, the diamond catching the light. The caption was the part that made my ears burn. When your fiancé tries to break up with you like it's a movie scene, and forgets I write better endings. She tagged the bar, tagged her friend sitting next to her, and added a laughing emoji for good measure. In the photo, I could see the man's arm draped casually along the back of her chair. It wasn't subtle. She wasn't hiding him anymore, wasn't pretending it was innocent. If anything, she wanted everyone to know. My stomach turned as I realized just how public she was making this. This wasn't a breakup anymore. It was a performance, and I was the unwilling co-star. I should have put my phone down and walked away. But no, I started reading the comments. People who used to come to our parties, who smiled in my face and told me we were perfect together, were now posting laughing emojis, making jokes, calling me the dramatic type. Her closest friends were egging her on, telling her she'd won, and that she looked so happy now. Then I saw one comment that made my heart race. Tell him about Monday. I didn't know who wrote it, but she replied with a winking face. Monday? What was Monday? My mind started pulling every memory from the last few weeks apart, looking for something I'd missed. I didn't even notice her leaving the bar until I looked up and saw her stepping outside with the other guy, arm in arm, like they were walking out of some romantic movie. They didn't look around for me, didn't care if I was nearby. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about me returning the ring. She'd been planning to humiliate me for a while. I'd just given her the perfect opportunity. I sat there on that bench, gripping my phone, my fingers shaking not from the cold but from a horrible combination of rage, confusion, and, yes, shame. Because no matter how badly she treated me, part of me still wanted to understand why. I didn't know yet that Monday would answer that question in a way that would make me wish I'd never asked. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that picture of the ring sitting on the bar counter, surrounded by mocking comments from people I thought were friends. My phone was still lighting up in the dark, buzzing on the nightstand like it had a pulse of its own. Sometime around 5 a.m., I gave up on sleeping and started scrolling again. That's when I found it. Tucked deep in the replies to her post, someone had tagged a link to an event. I almost didn't click it. My brain was telling me I'd had enough humiliation for one night. But my fingers moved before my better judgment could stop them. It was a flyer for a private celebration at a downtown rooftop lounge, scheduled for Monday evening. The headline read, "Love Wins, Engagement Celebration." Underneath, in gold letters, were her name and his. Not mine, his. There was even a photo of the two of them, standing so close their foreheads touched, smiling like they had just found their happily ever after. The same photo, I realized with a sick twist in my stomach, had been taken just a month ago, while she was still sleeping in my bed, wearing my ring. I scrolled through the guest list. Nearly 100 people had RSVP'd, including her entire circle of friends, a few of my own relatives, and even my old manager from my first job. I stared at the list until the names blurred. I wasn't just being replaced. I was being erased, rewritten out of my own story like I had never existed. My mind started replaying the last few weeks, connecting dots I didn't even know were there. The sudden work dinners that left her tipsy and glowing when she came home. The week she claimed she'd lost her phone, only to come back with a brand new one and a changed number for privacy. The way she'd stopped talking about our wedding entirely, brushing it off with, "We'll plan when things calm down." Things hadn't calmed down. They'd shifted, and I'd been too blind to see it. I sat there on the edge of my bed, my apartment still filled with the faint scent of her perfume clinging to the couch cushions, wondering how deep this betrayal went. And then my phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't another notification from her post. It was a private message from someone I didn't recognize, a woman named Clarice. Her opening line stopped me cold. "You don't know me, but you need to hear what's really happening on Monday." My hands trembled as I typed back, "What do you mean?" Her reply came almost instantly. "Meet me today at 3 p.m. Corner booth at Mason's Diner. Trust me, you'll want to see the proof before they go public. I didn't know who she was or how she was connected, but one thing was clear. Monday wasn't just a party. It was something bigger, something planned, and I was about to walk straight into the heart of it. By the time the afternoon rolled around, I'd worked myself into such a nervous mess that I'd nearly convinced myself not to go. My mind kept inventing scenarios. What if Clarice was some friend of hers sent to humiliate me further? What if this was just another game? But something about the urgency in her message, the almost protective tone in her words, pushed me out the door. The air outside was brisk, sharp enough to sting my cheeks, and the city felt louder than usual, like every honking horn and distant siren was part of the tension building in my chest. Mason's Diner was the kind of place that smelled like coffee and fried food no matter what time of day you walked in. I scanned the booths until I saw her. A woman in her late 30s, dark hair pulled into a loose bun, a leather jacket that looked like it had seen better days. She had that wary look in her eyes, like she'd been through her own wars. When our eyes met, she gave me a small nod, gesturing for me to sit. "You're Lowell?" she asked, her voice low. I nodded, still unsure whether I should even be here. Without another word, she slid a manila envelope across the table. I hesitated, staring at it like it might explode. "Open it," she said, glancing around the diner to make sure no one was watching. I pulled out a stack of glossy photos, my breath catching before I'd even made it halfway through the pile. Kasara and the man from the bar. Only this time, the settings weren't bars or public places. They were in what looked like a jewelry store trying on rings together. In another, they were on a balcony at some rooftop hotel, her leaning against him with the kind of ease I thought was ours alone. And the worst one, the one that made my stomach lurch, was them standing in front of a venue banner that read, "Congratulations, Nolan and Kasara. They've been planning this for months," Clarice said, watching my reaction. "And Monday isn't just a party. It's when they're going to announce their engagement publicly. But here's the part you don't know, Nolan, the guy she's with, he's engaged too, to my sister." I felt the blood drain from my face. She continued, her voice tightening. "My sister thinks he's out of town for work next week. Kasara doesn't know about me, but she's about to find out. I'm not here because I want to save you, Lowell. I'm here because I want to ruin them both." She pulled out her phone and showed me a string of messages Nolan had sent Kasara. They weren't just about love. They were about money, assets, and how to make the switch without legal trouble. My head was spinning. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a carefully crafted scheme. "I need you to help me," Clarice said, leaning in. "If we move fast, we can make sure their Monday night turns into a disaster they'll never forget. You in?" My mouth was dry, my voice barely more than a whisper when I said, "I don't know if I can do this." But even as I spoke, part of me knew I wasn't walking away. Not this time. Clarice didn't waste time once she had my attention. She leaned across the table, her voice a low hum beneath the diner's background chatter, and began sketching out what she called the reveal. It wasn't revenge in the messy, emotional sense. It was something calculated, timed down to the minute. Her idea was to let Kasara and Nolan walk right into their own trap in front of everyone they'd invited. I listened, half horrified, half fascinated, as she explained how we'd use their own event against them. First, we'd need proof, undeniable, irrefutable proof that could be projected, quite literally, for all to see. Clarice had already collected her own photos and messages, but she wanted me to add mine. Screenshots of Kasara's texts to me while she was clearly with Nolan, bank statements showing the money I'd lent her for wedding expenses that mysteriously disappeared, the receipts for the ring she now mocked online. All of it bundled together like a portfolio of deceit. Then came the delivery method. The rooftop lounge where their party was being held had a massive LED display wall for engagement slideshows. Clarice had a tech-savvy friend who could get our files queued up to play during their big announcement, replacing whatever romantic montage they had planned. The idea sounded both genius and terrifying. I could already imagine the silence that would fall over the room when the first photo of them in the jewelry store appeared, followed by timestamps, text exchanges, and that smirking balcony shot. Clarice's eyes were sharp as she spoke, her tone all business. This isn't about screaming or throwing drinks. We make them their own undoing. They'll never be able to talk their way out of it. I sat back, trying to process it all. The thought of standing there, watching Kasara's perfect little fantasy implode, sent a strange mix of adrenaline and guilt through me. For years, I'd been the one who avoided confrontation, who let things slide to keep the peace. But this wasn't peace anymore. This was war, and it was being fought on a stage they'd built themselves. We agreed to meet again the next day to exchange files and finalize the timing. As we left the diner, Clarice gave me one last look, the kind that made me wonder if she trusted me at all. "Don't get cold feet," she said. "You've already lost enough. Don't let them win, too." Walking home, I kept picturing Monday night. Kasara in that smug, confident pose, Nolan's arm around her, the room filled with people ready to cheer. And then the screen flickering to life with the truth. I told myself it would be satisfying, that it would give me closure. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered that it could just as easily blow up in my face. And knowing my luck, that voice might be right. Monday night came faster than I thought it would. By the time I stepped out of the rideshare and into the glow of the rooftop lounge, my pulse was hammering so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. The city skyline glittered behind the glass walls, the kind of backdrop Kasara always said she wanted for our wedding someday. Now she was getting it with someone else, and I was here to watch it all burn from the inside. Clarice had been right. The place was crawling with their people. I recognized faces instantly. Her friends from college, co-workers I'd met at holiday parties. Even one of my own cousins who gave me a confused half-smile, like he wasn't sure if he should acknowledge me. Clarice was already there, standing near the bar with a glass of champagne she hadn't touched. When our eyes met, she gave the smallest nod, then glanced toward the far end of the room where a sleek black laptop sat connected to the giant LED screen. Her tech guy was posted nearby, pretending to check the sound system but in reality making sure our files were locked and ready. Seeing it all in place made my stomach flip. This was real now, there was no undoing it once it started. Kasara and Nolan arrived about 20 minutes later, fashionably late and glowing like a couple straight out of a magazine spread. She was wearing a pale gold dress that shimmered under the lights, her hair in loose waves, and he had on a tailored suit like he'd just stepped off the cover of some luxury lifestyle ad. They worked the room like royalty, Kasara hugging her friends with exaggerated excitement, Nolan shaking hands and laughing as if every person there had been personally invited to witness their perfect life. I kept to the edge of the crowd, pretending to sip from my drink while watching every move they made. Clarice stayed closer to the center, her eyes following Nolan like a hawk waiting for the right moment to strike. When the lounge manager dimmed the lights and asked everyone to gather near the screen for a special presentation, the air shifted. Guests shuffled forward, some pulling out phones to record the big moment. Kasara clung to Nolan's arm, her smile impossibly wide, and I knew she was ready to see whatever romantic slideshow they had prepared. What she didn't know, what no one in that room except for 3 people knew, was that the file queued up wasn't hers. It was ours. Every photo, every timestamp, every incriminating message set to display in front of her family, his family, and a sea of friends. Clarice's contact gave us a quick thumbs up from the laptop, and my chest tightened as the screen flickered to life. Kasara's eyes lit up at the first slide, until it wasn't a picture of her and Nolan at some scenic location. It was a shot of her in the jewelry store, holding up the ring with Nolan's arm around her waist, the date stamp in the corner showing it was taken months before our breakup. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Her smile faltered, confusion flashing across her face before she forced it back into place. Then the second slide appeared, a screenshot of her messages to me about late work nights, paired with Nolan's texts to her about our secret getaways. The room went dead quiet except for a few gasps. Nolan's hand slowly dropped from her waist. Kasara's head whipped toward the laptop, her voice rising as she demanded they stop the slideshow. But the tech guy didn't even look at her. Slide after slide kept rolling. Balcony photos, hotel receipts, the engagement party flyer from her post, each one hammering the truth into the air like a drumbeat. Phones were up everywhere now, people recording, whispering, stepping back like they didn't want to get caught in the blast radius. I stood there frozen, torn between a grim satisfaction and a gnawing unease in my chest. This was what I'd agreed to. This was what I'd wanted. So why did it suddenly feel like I was watching something spiral far beyond anything I'd imagined? The room had descended into chaos. Guests whispering, some slipping out, others staring openly at the screen as it cycled through the last of the evidence. Kasara's voice was shrill now, ordering the staff to shut it down. But it was too late. The final slide appeared. A split image of her laughing in the bar with Nolan and the ring box I'd returned, sitting alone on the counter. The timestamp was from just 2 nights ago. It was the perfect closing statement, and the silence that followed was deafening. Nolan stepped back from her completely, his hands raised like he wanted nothing to do with the scene unraveling in front of him. He muttered something I couldn't catch before he turned and walked out, leaving her standing there with every eye on her. Her confidence cracked in real time. Shoulders slumping, hands fidgeting, eyes darting from one face to another like she was searching for someone to defend her. No one did. Clarice gave me a glance that was equal parts satisfaction and relief. We didn't need to say anything. The work was done. People were already moving away from Kasara, shaking their heads, muttering under their breath. Whatever reputation she had carefully curated was gone in a matter of minutes. I didn't stay to see what she'd do next. I walked toward the exit, my chest lighter than it had felt in months. Outside, the night air felt different. Not cold and biting like it had on the night I gave back the ring, but crisp, almost clean. Clarice caught up with me just before I reached the street. "Told you they wouldn't win," she said with a small smile. We went our separate ways, and for the first time in a long while I didn't feel like the guy left behind. I wasn't replaying arguments in my head or wondering what I could have done differently. Instead, I felt free. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about finally stepping out of something toxic and knowing I'd never have to crawl back. That night, I deleted her number, blocked her on every platform, and even removed the weather app that still showed her city. I made myself a promise. The next time I bought a ring, it would be for someone who didn't just love the idea of me, but actually loved me. And that's where I'll leave it, with the truth out, the weight gone, and the future finally mine to shape. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments what moment you think changed everything the most. And don't forget, you're watching Reddit Confessions, where every story has a twist you'll never see coming.